Ladies and gentlemen, today something big has arrived, and it's not actually hardware, it's software that if you have an Nvidia graphics card is probably going to affect you in a very positive way, because what we have running here is the latest version of Cyberpunk, that by the time you're watching this should also be available, that features the latest version of DLSS 3.5. And not only does this have the latest version of their frame generation technology, but it accesses something that you guys are actually going to love, which is called Ray Reconstruction. That might not sound that interesting, but essentially it's going to make your ray tracing even better, and it has the potential to give you an even higher frame rate. Don't know what happened to my voice there for a second. I got all excited and swallowed and got out of breath all at the same time. But real talk, this really does have the potential to be a huge update. I have yet to see it yet, so we're going to learn all about this together. But ultimately, if this does make your ray tracing look better and give you a higher frame rate, and it is going to be coming to loads and loads of games in the future, this is a serious win for Team Green. And I think they need it. They've not had one in a while. So let's learn absolutely everything you need to know right after a short word from this video sponsor. Intel Gamer Days is back in the UK for 2023, bringing over a week of PC gaming deals right to your doorstep. There are fabulous flash sales on laptops, PC components and systems, all powered with Intel Core CPUs or ARC graphics. Deals include up to £300 off products from ASUS, MSI, Lenovo, Acer and more. So what are you waiting for? Grab your Intel Gamer Days deal today with the link down below. Rightio then, without any further ado, let's jump straight into the options menu to see what has actually changed. And you'd be forgiven for thinking that there's not actually that much difference, because you still have your presets. You've got DLSS frame generation, that was part of DLSS 3, super resolution, which is part of 2, DLSS sharpness, but then look, here's the new one. This is called DLSS Ray Reconstruction, and this is the clever thing that can actually increase your frame rate, but crucially is going to give you even better looking visuals when using ray tracing. And essentially the way it works is pretty nifty, because what usually happens when you're running ray tracing is you have some denoisers running locally on your system, and they make mistakes. It's a very intensive situation, and it just can't work out what all of the different pixels should actually look like. And this is still going to be the case with Ray Reconstruction. However, it's now doing this with deep learning. So Nvidia have got some supercomputer type thing running all of these different calculations, and then it's a lot easier for your system to actually work out what the right lighting should look like. So not only is it going to make less mistakes, but you're going to have more realistic looking lighting, again by using deep learning. So it's pretty cool. I'm going to start by disabling this so we can get a little baseline so we can see the before and after, but I do also want to stress that unlike DLSS frame generation that's exclusive to the 40 series of GPUs, this quite nicely will actually work on the older generation as well. So this isn't something that you need to necessarily upgrade your graphics card to actually achieve unless you're running on Pascal or older, which is pretty cool. We will be using DLSS Super Resolution, but we set this to balanced. We're running this at 4K and we're using a 4090 to, I guess, give you the best case scenario, but obviously if you are running this on an older card, make sure you're running it at an appropriate resolution and use the right RTX setting, I suppose, for your GPU. And as we scroll all the way down, you will see that we are still in the path tracing technology preview. So you might start to see a few things that maybe don't look quite right, or maybe the performance isn't as optimized as it could be. Basically, Nvidia and Cyberpunk are saying this is still a work in progress. So here we are, moment of truth. Are we gonna see a difference? Let's load in. And don't forget, this is running with path tracing, so your frame rate isn't going to be as high as if you're running with the traditional ray tracing that is a lot less intense. But we pretty much want to see this game at its best. And I mean, you can't argue with the lighting here. It looks absolutely phenomenal. It really, really does. It's just as realistic as you can probably get from a game, because while a lot of Nvidia titles at the moment that they're touting with like full path tracing are cool, they obviously have like, well, they're older games and they update some of the textures, but it's just not really that realistic. It almost looks good, but it's kind of a bit odd at the same time, right? Because it's a mixture of old and new. Whereas this really does have modern day assets and things, so the world does come alive. It's very, very cool. But I want to see if we can find some reflections, because the thing that I have always noticed is just that some of the reflections look a little bit lower resolution. And I mean, this is probably quite a good place to start actually. So you can see the whole thing does look very good. There's plenty of reflections here, but you'll notice that you do lose a fair bit of resolution. I mean, this is quite a good example here, right? So you've got these vending machines and then they just don't look quite right. I mean, they look very good, but I mean, if you were to go outside and actually take a picture of this scene, it wouldn't look exactly like this. And this is what Ray Reconstruction aims to clean up a little bit. It's not going to make it look completely realistic, right? But it's going to get a lot closer. So let's go ahead and turn it on and see if we can actually notice a difference. Let's also pay very close attention, by the way, to the frame rate, because it's currently sitting at about 84, 85 frames a second with PC latency of about 54 milliseconds. So let's see what happens. Ray Reconstruction on. Let's start with our frame rate. Has it increased? Actually, yes, quite a bit. I mean, that's not placebo. That's actually quite noticeable. That's what, about 5 to 6 FPS more. Bear in mind this is at 4K as well, so that is definitely appreciated. If you're running at a low resolution, you might see a bigger, higher jump. But then it's just seemed to have cleared everything up a little bit. It just makes everything look a little bit sharper. I mean, obviously you've got, I guess, different surfaces here, so it's not a completely flat puddle, so you are going to get a little bit of diffusion. And you can sort of see that everything has been cleared up a little bit and the reflections do look a little bit sharper where they can be. As you walk along, I think that definitely looks quite a lot better and a lot more realistic. I mean, is it going to be night and day? No. I mean, the jump from ray tracing to, well, the jump from no ray tracing to ray tracing is obviously a lot more noticeable. But this is the thing that I've just noticed for quite a long time when I've been testing Cyberpunk, is just that it doesn't look quite as good as I would like when it comes to the reflections. I've always thought that the lighting's been fantastic, but that the reflections could use a little bit of work. I mean, I'm interested to see how well this works at some of the lower settings as well, because you think it's gonna look its best with path tracing, but obviously not everyone can run path tracing, so what about something a little bit more realistic? I mean, this is as good as Cyberpunk is gonna look. And you're getting around about 90 frames a second as well. I mean, it hasn't done anything really to the latency. We're still running at about 55 milliseconds or so. I mean, does that add latency? Let's try turning it off again. So let's test for placebo. 89 FPS, 53 milliseconds on the latency. Ray Reconstruction off. Latency is basically exactly the same, so it's not really fundamentally changed the performance of the pipeline. Yeah, I mean, you can tell we definitely have lost a little bit performance, so it's a no-brainer to turn the setting on. I don't really know why anyone would have this disabled. I think it is now enabled by default. Maybe it is so you can see the difference, right? Maybe in the future it's just going to be bundled in as part of DLSS and you won't actually see it. But fundamentally as well, it hasn't really changed the latency. It's basically exactly the same. It's going between 51 and 56 milliseconds. But yeah, I definitely think you can notice quite a big difference actually. And especially this reflection here, this is exactly what I'm talking about. To me, that just doesn't look good enough to be properly realistic. It's cool, but you can still tell that you've got this sort of, well, just pixelation really. I mean, look at this. This is a prime example of what I'm talking about. So once again, if we go and have a look at the Ray Reconstruction, is this the sort of thing it's going to help? I don't know, actually. I mean, definitely here. I think definitely here you can see it is a lot cleaner, but you can see the limitations of reflections because when you start to get a little bit further away again, the resolution still does drop. So this is not a Hail Mary, that's not the right phrase. I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? This doesn't solve all of your problems, right? But it definitely cleans it up. I think that's probably the way I would describe it. It does clean up the way that the reflections look. I think the whole thing just is more realistic now. I mean, especially here, where you can see all of these reflections in the window. Maybe it works better with a controller as well, but I think it almost doesn't help as well when we're sort of using WASD and we're going like either forward, left, or right. It makes the whole thing still look a little bit robotic in a way. But yeah, then when you actually start playing it properly, I think everything does just come alive. But what happens if we start to move a little bit quicker around the map? What if we jump on a bike? Ideally, my driving will be better than that. Apologies, everybody. Let's spin around and, oh, for goodness sake. And surprisingly, me crashing yet another vehicle has given us the opportunity to have a look at the vehicle I always thought looked not fantastic, if I'm honest, with ray tracing, because this is the gold vehicle that you can actually win if you win one of the fights, if you go down that route in the game. And the problem with it is while it does look pretty cool, this is with Ray Reconstruction turned on, we should point out, it does have a lot of reflections, and this is exactly when it can get a little bit confused, and I've found that some of the car just turns into massive fuzz when you are running the older version of the game. At the moment, it's looking pretty darn tasty and definitely looking very sharp and clean, but what happens when we start driving? Is this gonna fall apart? or is this going to look good? Let's have a look. The bit really that you need to pay very close attention to is this bit at the back. That was always the bit that looked its softest. But obviously it depends which part of the city you're going to be. So far, so good. If it can fix this, then genuinely I'm going to be very, very impressed. I think this would be the best example. So let's do a proper side-by-side comparison. I'm going to stay in this lane and we're going to have the two cars side by side for you so you can see the difference. And we'll try and get it as close as possible. Let me know down in the comment section below what you think. Is this a big enough difference, do you think? I mean, it is a free update, let's not forget that. I don't think with Ray Reconstruction it looks blob-like. I'm not saying it's dramatically different, but I just think it's a lot cleaner and it almost looks a little bit more shiny, shall we say. But the key difference really is that it's just cleaned up. It just looks more realistic. Okay then, so all in all, this is where I'm currently at. I think it looks better, and looking at the side-by-sides, you can definitely notice a difference. But when you're flicking between the settings yourself and you're not looking at the exact same spot, it's not necessarily noticeable to be like a huge difference. It's not like turning ray tracing on from off, but it's still definitely a nice to have. But then something that you might not know about this, and I confess is kind of a little bit disappointing, but I can understand why this is that if you go into the graphics options, you turn off path tracing, we'll hit apply, we will now see a very big boost to the FPS, and it would be fantastic to boost that even further and to get better lighting quality by turning on our Ray Reconstruction. But as you can see here, it's actually disabled, and I have had a very quick chat with Nvidia about why this is. Essentially, it's because Ray Reconstruction is needed when you're doing path tracing, because there's so many different things going on, and the denoiser just has a lot more to do, and it can't quite work everything out as efficiently, which is why you get some artifacts and why the performance can be boosted with this AI denoiser. But you don't get that in the non-RT path trace titles. They've told me there's no reason it can't come, it's just you're going to see a bigger impact in the path tracing titles. So I guess this is a little bit disappointing in a way, but if that is just how the technology works, then you know, it's not really the end of the world, I suppose. It would be nice if we could get even higher frame rates with DLSS, but it seems as if we're kind of at a little bit of a limitation at the moment. But what you're seeing here is just the standard ray traced ultra version of the game. And I think it still looks nice, but I mean, you can already tell a huge difference really, because the game just looks a lot more flat. But then again, the game now feels a lot more responsive because our frame rate is dived up by what, about 50%, 45%, and the game just does feel more responsive. We're getting around about 45 milliseconds of latency here. So ray tracing is still pretty much where it was before this video, right? It's very much a nice to have, and if you do want the best visuals possible, then, you know, I'll be honest, you're pretty much looking at an Nvidia card to achieve this level of fidelity. That is just a fact. But then it's also a fact that you've got to pay a lot of money to achieve it, and you're still going to be losing frame rate. So if you went for an AMD graphics card, then okay, your ray tracing won't be as good, but if you're not so fussed about that anyway, you can still try it, you can still turn it on to see the effects, but you're not going to be able to access the sort of fidelity that you're getting here. So I guess it doesn't really come as a surprise that Nvidia is doubling down on ray tracing. It's fantastic to see the best ray tracing yet. I mean, I think this is going to look pretty darn tasty in all of the games that do implement it, but maybe I'm not quite as excited as I was before I found out that it is path tracing exclusive, because while it is nice to have a boost to path tracing visuals and performance, there's still not really that many games that take advantage of path tracing. We're going to get there, but this is definitely something that is still going to be evolving over the next few generations of Nvidia graphics cards, which also does beg the question, if it's going to get dramatically better, do you need to buy one of these cards today? Well, if you want to play Cyberpunk, the answer is clearly yes. I mean, also I'd like to point out that this technology does work on the older generation of cards. We spoke about that, we were excited about that, but path tracing is so demanding you almost do need a 40 series card, or at least like a 3080 or 3090. The question goes out to you guys on this one. What do you think about this? Is this something you're going to be trying out for yourself? Are you still playing Cyberpunk, or are you going to be looking at an Intel Arc or a AMD graphics card because frankly you're not interested in ray tracing? We'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Absolutely smash the like button if you've enjoyed this. Get yourself subscribed. If you do want to check out current pricing on this rig, that's actually my personal gaming PC, you can find the full video linked in the description alongside all of my Amazon affiliate links. And while you're down there, why not bag yourself a deal with Intel Gamer Days? Get 2 free accessories with selected Acer notebooks, up to £250 off selected Lenovo laptops, up to £300 off selected Asus notebooks and motherboards, and plenty of deals from MSI. With so many deals to choose from, the hardest thing will be picking a favourite. Grab yours today with that link down below. But thank you so much for checking out this video. We'll catch you in the next one.